Good day, Year 9, and welcome to lesson number 2 of week number 10. We're going to be doing the penultimate lesson on health and disease. So we've got one more lesson tomorrow, and then we're going to be moving on to bioenergetics. So today we're going to be looking at diet, exercise, and the diseases associated with poor diet and poor or lack of exercise. So before we get started, we're just going to do a little thinking activities to get us in the right frame of mind. We've got 4 pictures here. We've got an office worker, a labourer, an athlete, and an office worker. So think about who uses the most energy out of these people in the course of a day. I've got 4 questions that kind of go with that. You do not need to write anything down. There's no right or wrong answers on this. It's just your opinions of it and just your thoughts before we get going. So question number 1 is, do they have different energy requirements for their job? 2, what does that mean in terms of the food that they eat? Number 3, what can happen if the person eats too much or too little? And number 4, swap the gender roles. Does it matter in terms of requirements? So have a think about those. You can pause the video, make sure you've got an answer for each of them in your head, and then when we go through the lesson, we'll see whether you were right. Okay, so what do we need to take from this lesson? We need to be able to describe some health problems caused by poor diet or lack of exercise. For 5 to 6s, we need to be able to describe causal mechanisms for the link between exercise and health. So things that cause diseases based on the amount of exercise we do and our diet and things like that. For 7 to 8, we need to suggest reasons for the correlation between exercise and health and describe which are causal and explain in detail why eating a poor diet can lead to health problems. So I've got some newspaper articles here. There was a big focus on health a couple of years back. There was certain celebrities doing certain things that brought attention to it. So here are some newspaper clippings. Some of them are a little bit old. Have a read of the headlines that were published and think about how that makes you feel. What are your opinions on it? Again, there's no right or wrong answer in it. It's just what does it say to you. So pause the video, have a look at the headlines and think about what it means to you, what you think about it. Okay, so as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of information on there. We've got about obesity, diabetes, and often those two can go hand in hand for type 2 diabetes. We've got about the cost to the NHS in the bottom left corner and things like that, all of which obviously have an impact on all of us. So some new information for you, but you will have covered stuff similar to this in Key Stage 3. If you take in more energy than you need, excuse my dog there, if you take in more energy than you need, the excess energy is stored as fat. So if more calories go in than what we use, then we store that as fat. Some fat is essential to cushion organs, provide insulation, and act as an energy store. But if energy intake is too high, the person can become overweight or obese. What do we think the health problems are associated with being overweight or obese? So you might have heard of some of the health problems associated with it. Can you think of all of the diseases or health problems that can be caused by being overweight or obese? So you can pause the video and have a think about that. Okay, so here are some of the ones that you might have mentioned. We've spoken about blocked arteries, especially blockages to the coronary arteries leading to heart attacks, things like that. It also causes high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, strokes and aneurysms, and also arthritis, which is the wearing away of the joints, makes it very painful to move. What type of diet or lifestyle could cause you to become overweight or obese? So, for people who are obese or overweight, what would their diet or lifestyle look like? So, you probably thought about something like this. So, a couch potato, so not much exercise happening on a daily basis, and then high salt, sugar, and fatty foods like fast food, crisps, sweets, and fizzy drinks. Okay, so in 2004, there was a famous documentary that was done by Morgan Spurlock, and he basically just ate nothing but McDonald's for 30 days. Now, it was a big thing at the time. Again, it was bringing light onto the poor health practices of fast food restaurants. It's why quite a lot of fast food restaurants now offer healthy alternatives. But he basically went on this journey, 30 days, every one of his meals was McDonald's. He followed the average American number of steps per day, which was 5,000. And if he was offered for his meal to be supersized, then he had to have a supersized meal. And supersize in America is a lot bigger than what it was in England and still is at the moment. So I'm going to ask you don't have to make any notes, but if you exit this video, and I've put a link to a very concise version of the documentary. Obviously, the documentary is a lot longer, but I think this one's about 7.5 minutes long. If you want to watch the full version of it, is available on YouTube if it is something that you're interested in. So if you could exit the video now, go to show my homework, follow the link on Supersize Me, and just watch that short extract of his documentary. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just see how much we have taken on board. We've got 4 questions here, ranging from 1 mark answer to 4 mark answer. Question number 1 is identify 3 poor lifestyle choices that can lead to ill health. Number 2, a diet high in fat can lead to obesity. Name 1 other effect it may have on the body. Number 3, give 2 illnesses that can be caused by obesity and explain how obesity causes each. And number 4, suggest steps that could be taken to help prevent a further rise in the number of these health problems. So give what you can on that from your own knowledge, from some of the things that we have covered in the lessons, and we'll see how we do. So if you pause the video, answer those questions. You can either write down the questions and then the answer, or just write in full sentences. Either way is fine. So pause the video now, please. Okay, so question number 1, identify 3 poor lifestyle choices that can lead to ill health. So lack of exercise, overeating or poor diet, smoking. Okay, you might have mentioned other ones that we haven't covered in these lessons. So drinking, too much alcohol, drugs, illegal drugs, things like that would count too. Number 2, a diet high in fat can lead to obesity. Name 1 other effect it may have on the body. So we mentioned a few of them. High blood cholesterol. You could have spoken about arthritis. You could have talked about coronary heart diseases, any of those. Number 3, give 2 illnesses that can be caused by obesity and explain how obesity causes each. So you might have mentioned that it can lead to type 2 diabetes because too much sugar causes strain on the insulin production. You might have said arthritis because you have more weight on the joints. Or you could have talked about heart diseases which are caused by blocked arteries. Same with strokes as well. You could have said about that, caused by blocked arteries. Number 4, suggest steps that can be taken to help prevent a further rise in the number of these problems. Increasing your exercise, having a better diet as well, going to be the 2 main ones. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to think about what are the benefits of regular exercise. So why is it important that we regularly exercise? Now, the reason why we're told and do exercise is it burns off excess calories, it increases the size of your heart and your lung capacities, it lowers the LDL cholesterol, so that's the bad cholesterol that can lead to blocked arteries and things like that. It strengthens your bones, it increases the ratio of muscle to fat, which gives you a higher metabolism. And also relieves stress because it releases endorphins. So those are some of the benefits of exercising regularly. But what actually is classed as regular exercise? So whatever your age, it's important to exercise. There's strong scientific evidence that being physically active can help you lead a healthier and happier life. So apart from being important physically, it's also important mentally. How much do you think we should exercise? So what do you think the recommended amount of exercise is per day? So the government says that, it's not the government as in Boris Johnson, I think it'll be obviously the scientists involved in that, say that need to do at least 60 minutes of physical activity every day if you are aged between 5 and 18. And physical activity can range from moderate activity, so that's things like cycling, playground activities, or brisk walking, up to vigorous activities, which would include running and sports like tennis. On 3 days a week, these activities should involve exercises for strong muscles and bones, such as swinging on playground equipment, hopping and skipping, and sports such as gymnastics. So 3 days a week should be looking at increasing muscle mass and bone density. Now, for any type of activity to be beneficial to your health, it needs to increase your heart rate, it's going to increase your breathing rate, and it's also going to make you feel warmer. So that's how you know that you are taking part in moderate intensity activity. And it will be different for everyone. So a brisk walk for some would be moderate intensity, whereas for others it would be very low intensity. Vigorous activity will have lots of health benefits, and it will be better than just moderate activity. So there should be some vigorous intensity activity as well as moderate intensity activity. And you can tell if it's vigorous because you're breathing hard and fast and your heart rate has gone up quite a bit. And if you're working at this level, you won't be able to say more than a few words without pausing for breath. So that's what the difference is between moderate activity and vigorous activity. Should be doing 60 minutes every day. So I want you now to think back over the last week, and do you think that you have achieved those 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity levels each day? Okay, and if you have, what enabled you to be able to do that? And if you did not, what are the reasons for why you wouldn't have done that? Don't worry, we're not going to be marking that or anything, but it's something to think about. I know that I mostly stick to moderate, just walking the dog, rarely take it up to vigorous intensity anymore. Okay. So it's medically proven that people who do regularly exercise will have 35% lower risk of coronary heart disease and stroke, 50% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, 50% lower risk of colon cancer, 20% lower risk of breast cancer, 30% lower risk of an early death, 83% lower risk of osteoarthritis, 68% lower risk of hip fracture, 30% lower risk of falls, and 30% lower risk of depression. So apart from the benefits that we had on a few slides ago, you can also see that there are major benefits in terms of your health. So can you pop down some of the benefits to daily physical activity? You don't need to write all of them down. If you just select 3 or 4 of them to put down that you think are the most important, then that will suffice. Oh, forgot one, sorry. 30% lower risk of dementia as well. Okay, so we're going to have a think about what we have just taken in, and obviously this will help for your notes as well. So question number 1, can you put down the recommended amount of exercise children and young people between 5 and 18 need to do? So can you remember how much the government suggests you do? Number 2, list 3 benefits to your health of regular exercise. Number 3, explain the difference between moderate intensity activities and vigorous intensity activities, giving some examples. And number 4, explain why people who exercise regularly are usually healthier than people who take little exercise. So take some time on this. It should take you between 10 and 15 minutes. So pause the video now and answer those questions. Okay, so let's see how we did. Grab a different coloured pen. We'll go through, mark where you have achieved the mark and add if necessary. So question number 1 was asking what the recommended amount of exercise is for 5 to 18-year-olds, and it was at least 60 minutes every day and 3 days a week, looking at exercises that will build muscle and bone strength. Number 2 was the benefits of it. Burns off excess calories, increases the size of the heart and lungs, lowers LDL cholesterol, strengthens bones, increases the ratio of muscle to fat, which gives you a higher metabolism, and it relieves stress and releases endorphins. So very well done if you remembered 3 of those. Number 3 was the difference between moderate and vigorous intensity activity. So moderate intensity is raised heart rate and breathing rate and feeling warmer, whereas vigorous intensity is breathing hard and fast and your heart rate has gone up quite a bit. Examples for moderate: brisk walking, cycling, things like that. For vigorous, it's going to be the more higher intensity stuff, so it's going to be running and tennis, football, things like that, because you'll be running in that. Okay, and number 4, what is the health benefits? So exercise builds cardiovascular fitness. So people who exercise are likely to have healthier hearts and bigger lungs. People who exercise are less likely to be obese, less likely to suffer diseases such as type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And there are many other options that you could have given that we have covered. It might have been specifically said coronary heart diseases, strokes, dementia. So any of those are great. Okay, now you will have done about type 2 diabetes before. There are 2 different types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes is people that have to inject insulin because they're not producing it. It's not having any effect on cells. Normally caused by genetics, and is not something that can be stopped. Is that the word? Prevented would be the best word. Type 2 diabetes, though, is different. So can you remember anything about type 2 diabetes? So what causes it, how it's treated, anything like that? Okay, so don't worry if you haven't written anything down. We are going to go through some information about type 2 diabetes, so you can add that to your notes. So what I'd like you to do is copy this table. You don't have to put it as a table, you can just write the title of the first column and then leave a space. But we're going to go through some information slides, and you're going to take from that some symptoms, some treatments of type 2 diabetes. There's no cure, but it's treated. Problems associated with type 2 diabetes and the causes of type 2 diabetes. So we're going to go through the information and those are the 4 things that you need to make notes on. Okay, so we're going to start off with the symptoms. So this can be an indicator of whether you have got type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. The symptoms are very, very similar. Quite a few people have got diabetes without actually realizing that they have diabetes, and it might be because you're not obviously ill, you might just be a little tired and run down. But we've got a list here of 6 of the common symptoms for type 2 diabetes. So peeing more than usual, especially at night. And the reason for that is because you're often feeling thirsty all of the time. So if you are drinking considerably more than what you would normally have, then that can be a symptom. Feeling very tired, losing weight without trying to, cuts or wounds take longer to heal, and it can also have an effect on the eyes which causes blurred vision. So those are just 6 common symptoms of people who have type 2 diabetes. So if you notice any of those, then you can always go and get yourself checked at the doctors. So what are the treatments for people who have got type 2 diabetes? Most of the time, people do need medicine. It's not going to be an injection like it is on for type 1 diabetes. It can be a pill, things like that. It helps keep the blood sugar levels as normal as possible, because too high blood sugar levels or too low blood sugar levels can have serious effects on your health. You want them to be at the right levels. Quite often, type 2 diabetes can be treated with just a healthy diet and more activity levels or higher activity levels, because that will manage blood sugar levels. So take what you need from that. If you need to pause the video, that's fine. Pause and then press play when you are done. So the next one is we're going to look at complications associated with type 2 diabetes. So these are the things that can happen if you have type 2 diabetes and you don't keep your blood sugar levels at the right level, or if you don't get any treatment at all. These can be some of the effects of it. So after a long period of time, you can have very high blood glucose levels that can actually have serious problems on your health. They can damage your heart, they can damage your eyes, they can also have an effect on extremities, so your feet, your kidneys, because that is madly trying to filter the glucose. And those are some of the quite severe complications of type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes can lead to heart disease and strokes, a loss of feeling and pain, so it actually causes nerve damage, foot problems, so you can get sores and infections in your feet, and amputations are quite common, vision loss and blindness, miscarriage and stillbirth, and problems with the kidneys, so causing kidney failure and things like that. So those are some of the complications with type 2 diabetes if the blood sugar levels are not controlled. So pause the video now, get what you need from it, and then press play, and we'll go on to the last one. Okay, so the last one, causes of type 2 diabetes. Now, it's not always to do with the weight or obesity. It used to be called late onset diabetes because it only used to really occur with people who were old age. But now, obviously, with the rising levels of obesity and people being overweight, there are a lot more cases involved in that. So we've got 7 different causes of type 2 diabetes. So these are things that are going to increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. So weight, starting off with, being overweight is a primary risk factor for type 2 diabetes because the more fatty tissues that you have, the more they become resistant to insulin, which is the hormone that controls it. However, you don't have to be overweight to develop it. Fat distribution, so if your body stores fat primarily in your abdomen, so if you get it around your stomach area, that actually is a cause of type 2 diabetes than if you are storing it elsewhere, in your hips, thighs, and places like that. Lack of exercise or inactivity. So the less active you are, the greater the risk of type 2 diabetes. Family history. So if you have got members of your family with type 2 diabetes, it can increase your risk. Your age. So after 45, really, it can increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. And that's normally because people are exercising less or because they're losing muscle mass and gaining weight. Pre-diabetes. So pre-diabetes is a condition where your blood sugar level is higher than normal, but it's not high enough to be classed as diabetes. So this will often can happen from any of the other causes. It's not full-blown diabetes, it won't be classed as diabetes, but it's definitely higher than what it should be. This would normally be a warning sign to people to try and manage their diet and exercise more, because if it's left untreated, then it can become type 2 diabetes. And the last one is gestational diabetes. So quite often people get gestational diabetes when they're pregnant. Your risk of then developing type 2 diabetes increases. So if you gave birth to a baby weighing more than 9 pounds, that can also increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. I know that I was over 9 pounds, and that's just because the blood sugar levels are high in the mother, and then obviously be transferred to the baby. Okay, so pause the video. Remember, you don't need to write all of that. You just pop down in the bits in bold of the main causes of type 2 diabetes. Okay, so the next bit is very interesting in terms of the amount of sugar that you eat will obviously increase your risk of being overweight and obese, and also increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. But manufacturers are very, very clever at hiding the sugar that goes into products. So for the more conscientious amongst you, you might read the labels of your food to look at how much sugar levels are in that food, because obviously too much sugar is not a good thing. But they have got little tricks in which they can actually hide the amount of sugar that is in there. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I've got 6 questions that go with the video that is on Show My Homework. So you can either print these questions out if you have a printer, or just jot them down. And then I'm going to ask you to exit this, go onto the link on Show My Homework, and watch the short video on hidden sugar in the supermarkets. and if you could answer those 6 questions. So if you get the questions, exit the video, go onto the link and answer the questions. Okay, so hopefully you watched the video. So it's quite interesting to see the tricks that actually happen and hiding the amount of sugar that is in it. They want to put sugar in it because it tastes better, so people are more likely to buy it. But obviously don't want it out there being high in sugar because that puts people off. So it's quite sneaky. So we're going to go through those questions and let's see if we got any of them right. So how many food products in an average grocery store contain hidden sugar? And it's actually about 3/4. There's sugar in many things, and it won't just say sugar, it will have these other aliases on it. I know that this is obviously an American video, but it's still very similar in the UK. How is this sugar hidden in the labels? They give it different names. So it doesn't just say sugar, it will actually have these different names that throw people off and also distribute the sugar out. So it's not just the main ingredient. What do manufacturers do to make it seem like there's less sugar in a product? They, as I just said, they break it down into different types. So they come lower on the ingredients list, but actually if you combine them all together as sugars, it would come out towards the top, if not the top. Number 4, what is the WHO recommended sugar limit? It's about 5% of your total calorie intake, so that's about 25 grams of sugar per day, which is a little bit worrying, seeing that there's about 65 grams in just a bottle of soft drink. Number 5, what is fructose worse for you than glucose? What is fructose worse for you than glucose? So I think that is meant to be, why is fructose worse for you than glucose? And the reason for that is fructose is metabolized by the liver, and if there's too much, it's turned to fat. So there are different sugars that are processed in different ways. Fructose is actually metabolized or broken down by the liver, and it's the liver that will actually convert it into fat. Number 6, why is it okay to eat fructose-rich fruit? Because fruit also contains lots of fibers, which slow down the absorption of fructose by the liver. So hopefully we managed to pick out those bits of information on the video, and yeah, it was quite surprising. I'm sure most of you found it a little bit surprising as well. Obviously, if you can take anything from science, it's about knowing what kind of things to look out for like this, where people are a little bit sneaky. Okay, so hopefully we have taken on board some of those things. Hopefully we're able to talk about some of the health problems caused by a poor diet and a lack of exercise. That's really important from this lesson. 5 to 6, hopefully we're able to describe causal mechanisms for the link between exercise and health. So actually giving reasons why having a poor diet causes diseases or lack of exercise causes diseases. For 7 to 8, suggest reasons for the correlation between exercise and health and decide which are causal. So again, knowing what it is about a lack of exercise or a poor diet, how that actually causes different diseases like coronary heart diseases, blocked arteries, arthritis, and things like that. So hopefully we're able to pick that up as we went. Okay, so well done, and thank you very much for accessing this lesson. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the last lesson on health and disease, before we move on to photosynthesis. So very well done for accessing, and you'll hear from me tomorrow. Have a lovely day, guys.